Hello, everybody. The name is Nicholas Pickles, and today we are doing a quick test stream before my Big Friday stream. Every Monday, I'm going to stream on Twitch talking about big general news stuff that's occurred. Uh, and then on Friday, I'm going to just really focus on one topic. And yeah, so today I don't see here. I've been forgetting how much news is going on, so I have my own like Trump tracker and stuff that I want to talk about. So yeah, let's get to it. Let's talk about the stock market. Yeah, stock market watch. Stock market. Um. So let's see what's going on with the stock market. So big news that I think they lost about 1.5 trillion dollars in the stock market. Um, I don't want to do this. Okay, so markets whipsawed on Tuesday. On Tuesday, investors puzzled through the President Trump's commitment to tariffs with stocks dropping in early trading before recovering in late day. The SP 500 index fell 1.5% at its low point before recovering some ground, ending the day 0.8% lower. Recent waves of selling have left the S&P 500 nearly 10% below its mid-February record. Falling more than 10% was signify a symbolic milestone known on Wall Street as a correction. So not great. I was predicting this though. I had a feeling. I'm gonna pull up my cool ass page. I had a feeling that we were gonna bounce back from this, but it looks terrible optics for Trump to have such red in the market. It's easy to meme. It's easy to make fun of. This is effective, and this is gonna make him look awful. So if you look, I pulled up my Twitter because I've been posting about like just the memes that have been going on. A lot of liberals, a lot of left wing people, the Democrats, they are pinning this as like a failure from Trump. And I think it's mainly because, and we'll see that with an article after articles we read, um, will this be every month now? Because every time we announce a tariff, it seems like the stocks don't like this uncertainty. We do a tariff, we pull back a tariff. So is this just kind of the new norm that we're gonna have pretty uh low like stock crashes and maybe potentially get to a recession, like stuff like this. This is rough. That's rough to be. I mean, and this is a Democratic account. Like this is the committee of Democrats. Like that's good. That's good marketing. This is as someone who doesn't like Trump, this is what I'm rooting for. But this is what I wanted to show is this is the S&P 500 index to inauguration day. You can see here from Obama, Trump, and Biden, they had a relatively good economy. Obviously, for the 200 days for Biden, so far at 50. Are we even at 50? That don't make no sense. We're not at 50. But as we get into uh, his first few months, we see a dip, a terrible dip. With Biden, with Trump one, you could argue that there was COVID at play, and you can give a little bit of, COVID really threw our numbers off. Is this freak act of God? How do we, combat that? I don't think you can. I don't think there's much combatants. I think his uncertainty with the tariffs, and you see here, Tuesday's stock soon followed Trump's new threat of steep tariffs. Yeah, I mean, I look at this and I just think like this is the shittiness of the Trump policy. The Trump 2.0 is really shitty at making these images of a strong America, given that we do a tariff. And I would rather not have him have tariffs, right? But if you are doing a tariff, at least have some conviction. But he's not. We've pulled back, and before they even really started, I think the Canadian tariffs are still live. I don't know if all of them, because I know they're combating with the. There's some like electricity battles going on, like the power, who's getting what power from where. But I think amongst Mexico's tariffs, we pulled those back completely. Scheinbaum and Trump talked, and they say there's a deal, but what deal occurred, right? I don't know. I don't think there was any. Um, Tech heavy Nasdaq Composite Index wavered between gains and losses, closing 0.2% lower after a 4% drop on Monday. The Nasdaq is already in correction. Investors struggling to understand the administration's messaging on tariffs. Exactly. See, this is exactly what I was saying. Like I would, if I'm an investor, I'm looking at this like I can't trust the states. I don't know if they're gonna continuously be in this like tariff, not tariff war. Like That's just shitty. Investors are struggling to understand administration. Over the coming weeks, we expect further volatility and potential weaknesses in equity markets. Analysts at the Swiss bank UBS noted on Tuesday. On Tuesday, Mr. Trump said he would double the planned tariff on steel and aluminum imported from China to 50%, set to go effect on Wednesday. After the close of trading, the White House walked back that threat. See, I thought he still kept the Canadian one. That looks like a weak leader. Like, unless there were some concessions made behind the scenes, it looks bad for him. Like, the markets don't know if it's one's going in or not. Um, it said if Canada did not lower its levies on the trade, he would set tariffs on cars so high that they would permanently shut down the car industry. The shares of the Ford Motor and Stellantis both fell. General Motors share price recovered later in that day to a trade slightly higher. Oh, that's good news. Later there in the day, Doug Ford, Ontario's premier, said the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick had extended olive branch to Canada and that Canadian delegations would head to Washington in the next. There seems to be a lot of behind the scenes talking. Great, I guess. Like, I hope there's good that comes out of this, even though I hate Trump and his administration. I'm not sitting here, hoping that we are gonna have it worse. Like, I'm looking at this like, I hope we come out of this good. At the very least, given how unsturdy the Trump administration is, I hope we at least just come out unscathed. But if they have concessions and if Trump gets a deal out of this and makes the economy better, great. I just don't think there was a big issue to begin with. Like, when I looked at the issues of our economy and how much tariffs were against the U.S., that's something I'm glad that Trump put on the map. I didn't think there was this tariff war really going off. I always heard about the tariffs war, but we work so, it seems like, symbiotically with other countries that you kind of forget there's tariffs that exist. But there's sanctions and tariffs that currently exist in our modern day 2025. But as a Trump hater, I'm looking at this like, is this guy doing what he's saying he's gonna do? Or like, I can't tell. I can't tell. I don't think most people can tell where he stands. This inconsistency is really annoying. I don't know. I don't trust Trump to make this call. I don't trust that he's going to be consistent because he hasn't been a consistent figure even during his first administration. So consistency is not his thing, and he is kind of like the shoot from the hip guy, and people like that, I think, during his speeches. But for an economy and for investors, they don't like that. There's a reason why he went bankrupt 6 times. There's a reason why he's, as a businessman, failed on a lot of his fronts. And I think in the politics world, it works great. Say a bunch of things, say a million stuff. Here, though, there's volatility with the market because of inconsistencies. You can't be inconsistent with the market. You can be inconsistent as a politician. You can't be inconsistent as a investor, or at the very least, not as much as a politician can. Um, Okay, so USB and others are raising odds of a severe economic downturn later this year, but noted that this was still not its expected outcome. Our base case remains that Trump administration's aggressive stance on the trade will weigh on growth, but not as much as drive the U.S. into a recession. See, that's what I've been saying. I've been saying, like, I think it's gonna really hurt the market, and people who actually voted for Trump and have a market are gonna be like, shit, do I like this guy? But I don't think we're gonna go into recession. I think we avoided a recession post COVID, and I think it's likely to thank Biden, his combatant of just printing out money and continuously putting ourselves in a deficit. I think he avoided that. And yeah, he spent like most Democrats do, but he didn't spend as much as a Republican. And I think you look at his approach, it put us on a trajectory. And so to inherit this stock market after this rise, what it appears to be, I think Trump shot himself in the foot. I don't think enough to put us in a recession, but I think it's not going to look good for him. Um, Air travel. Oh, also with the air travel stuff going on, even though I think I made a video about this where I don't think air travel is as severe as people are making it out to be. It's definitely something we should look into, and there's a lot of overworked traffic control people. Trump's role right now to fire a bunch of people doesn't make sense, and his begging for people to come back shows that, like, yeah, this is not a smart administration. um because as he printed, the stock market has been ruined a success through Joseph Biden. Cherry pick Trump. Yeah, Trump did cherry pick the stock market and criticize Biden and said when he was doing good, it was Trump. When he wasn't, it was Biden. Biden bad. The focus remain on broader economic concerns. John Canavan, the lead U.S. analysis for at Oxford Economics, said on no analysis pointed to Trump's refusal to rule out the recession in an interview broadcast Sunday when he stated the economy was undergoing a period of transition. The Trump administration has offered um, sorry, I wanted to make sure you guys can still see me on my screen. Mr. Even if the tariffs lead to inflation, economic deterioration, Trump is likely to place the blame squarely on former President Biden. Technology shares decline in Japan, and Tuesday, Sony, SoftBank, Hitachi, Fujitsu, each falling more 2%. The giant Taiwan 70 corporation, if were both drawn 2%. Shares of okay. Associated with these factors, closely how mitigate the head raise in Trump and the years data shares trending company led is okay, cool. So that's the stock market. I don't think there's much report. I think we've bounced back a little bit, but I still think the stocks have been in this awful volatile state. So I don't know. I just don't think there's a world where like Trump is gonna bounce us back from all of this, but it is funny to see stuff like this where like Trump said stock markets are crashing, jobs numbers are terrible, we're heading to World War III, we have two of the most incompetent leaders in history, and then you have easily you can paint the same stuff to him. You can say like, oh my god, look how terrible this guy is, he's doing everything that he said was bad, and you can say like this is a transitional period, but if someone from Biden's side said that, you would look at him like he was crazy. So no, 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 I'm not letting it slide. Oh yeah, I saw recently that Elon said he was going to cut Social Security. I think he keeps calling it entitlement. So Musk said that he eyes Social Security. Washington AP, Elon pushed back, debunks theories about Social Security on Monday while describing federal benefits programs as rife with fraud. Rife with fraud. Citizens the primary target into crusade and reduce the government spending. The billionaire entrepreneur who was advising President Trump suggested that $500 billion to the $700 billion is in a waste need to be cut. Most of federal spending and entitlements, Musk told Fox News. That's the big one to eliminate. Commitments on popular program, other benefits provided the Americans could rattle politicians on both sides. Especially as already Facebook was changed so with an approach to lay off workers / programs. Musk estimates for the level of fraud and entitlements for far outpaces figures from watchdogs like Social Security. Inspector General previously said there were 71 billion in improper payments from fiscal year 2015 through 2022. That's less than 1% of benefits paid out during the time period. Oh, so it's such like a low amount. Musk said that there were 20 million people who were definitely dead marked as alive. However, the leader of the agency has rejected these claims about widespread payments of dead people. These individuals are not necessarily receiving benefits. See, the interview with Ms. Reminder must deep skepticism, even hostility towards a program which provide monthly benefits to retirees. Some children. Trump has promised to defend Social Security. Must have described it as the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time. It's funny to hear this guy who's like the richest person of all history. Like there's no human that's ever gotten to his wealth. You can argue per capita like a king from back in the day. Like there are notable rich people for their time, but he is the most, I think, by dollar count richest person to ever exist. I would argue too per capita because I think the way we weigh wealth is different then and now, and I'm sure there's someone smarter than me that could argue against both sides. But I look at him and I go like, you don't have to worry about retirement. You're set. You're so set. So when he says all this stuff, I just look at it like, who the fuck are you, bro? Who are you? Musk said the Monday that federal entitlements are a mechanism by which Democrats attract and retain illegal immigrants by essentially paying them to come here and turn them into voters. The allegation echoed a great replacement theory, which claims policies try to expand their power by reshaping the country, which is crazy because I think like people of color voted for Trump in mass, and so like those people of color typically on average were coming from like first generation or they were first generation themselves. So you gain votes by a mechanism of like attracting people to come to this country, which I don't think is inherently bad. I don't look at that and hear that and go, oh, that's an inherently bad claim. Like you're attracting people to come to the country because it's a great country. I just, are we placating them? Maybe, but who doesn't placate in the political world? I mean, Trump placated that he's on the opposite end. He's going to get rid of them with the idea that his supporters believe that by getting rid of them, my life is going to get better. So you could easily say you're placating them, and you could argue, well, I'm placating to Americans. I'm American. But I just think it's a politician saying politician stuff. Unless you truly believe that there's some like economic gain by getting rid of these people or attracting these people, I don't really think like them. I think about like what's the gain for the middle class and lower income people. That's where I come from. And so when people defend a billionaire's take on Social Security, I have hesitancy because I'm like, where are you coming from? I'm coming from a place where I would like to have Social Security. I think it'd be a nice cushion, and it keeps, I think, 2/3 out of elderly out of poverty. To me, that's a net positive. I'm not going to be able to live like an Elon and pay for my father's stuff with my Emerald Mine money that my father had. Like, I don't come from that. I hope to come from wealth. I hope to gain wealth and make it so my kids there come from that. But these people don't think like us, and I don't blame them. He didn't choose to be born that way, but it's also, I'm not going to let him dictate what we do as a society. Um, Frankly, I can't believe I'm here doing this. Musk said it's kind of bizarre. Musk is the world's richest person and still runs his private enterprise. He also thinks Trump for his conversating without the president's support. We won't make any progress here. Trump has publicly backed Musk and gave him extraordinary influence over the federal government. Um, Musk has not often spoken publicly since joining the administration. He accused Democrats of attacking dealerships. Musk sits down with Kulo in their interview. He previously did a joint interview with Sean Hannity, sat down with Joe Rogan. Republicans have spent decades trying to reduce the size and scope of the government. The American people are sick of the swamp. They're sick of the waste. For the first time, there are no... Throw to announce common sense. Bad thing. The Trump is a Musk. So, okay, that's... I thought he legitimately said we should cut Social Security. White House insists Musk cut Social Security, Medicaid won't affect benefits. See, I just feel like now we're at a point where you can't deny it anymore. I think there was a sort of like talking kind of both sides. Um, Most of the federal spending is entitled. So yeah, so he calls it entitlement, and it's like no one's entitled to. We invested into this. I think this is why people are calling it that Trump is eyeing Social Security, because he keeps saying it. He keeps trying to put this like picture out there of these are entitlements. This is a Ponzi scheme. I see why the fear. I thought he legitimately said we should cut Social Security, but I guess he doesn't even have to. He said, with his chest out, that this is entitlements. This is a Ponzi scheme. This is stuff that people are abusing, and I think we can cut this. And I think he thinks, and Trump thinks, that there's a way to cut this and not affect regular average Joes, but average Joes are going to be affected. I think that's why Trump isn't dumb. I think he's looking at this like cutting Social Security is bad politics, and it also just doesn't make sense. Like, why would I push back on my own viewers? But I think also he likes the tax cuts, and with the tax cuts, you have to come and think, well, where are we going to cut? Because now we're losing money getting funded to the federal government. Many, I think, on the most radical spectrum are like, good, we want the government to fail. Many on the other spectrum are like, oh my God, they're attacking social safety nets. They want to kill us all. I think I'm in a little bit of a middle where they don't really care about Social Security. They just know that it takes a lot of money and they got to cut some money. I think the budget reconciliation bill said that we're going to cut $880 billion. So, where do you take that from? And I just look at this like they're going to eventually have to take it from Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. They will not cut Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicaid benefits, the White House said in the press. President Trump has said it over and over. The administration won't like the government finding waste. I think they keep thinking there's waste and fraud that's going to cost up to that $72 billion or whatever. Yeah, they found from Social Security office, the Inspector General that found, including no, it's 880 billion. That's the goal to cut. Trump repeatedly said they did not want to cut, but he said that he would seek to get rid of fraud. What's going to be classified as fraud? Obviously, to us, you and I, regular folks, fraud is like if somebody is dead, they shouldn't get that money, and that's what Trump is parodying. Oh, if they're dead, they shouldn't get this money. We all agree. There's already systems in place that already do that. But you can't achieve the goal. Just right here, you can't achieve their goal of slashing $2 trillion federal spending over the next without cutting Medicaid. The reconciliation bill, even though it doesn't specifically say we're cutting Medicaid, Medicare, it's going to be hard to cut. I think it's the Energy and something committee. If you tell them to cut funds and they cut everything they can that's not Medicare, they're going to eventually cut Medicare, because that's what they have to get. They have to get to that certain 880 million or $80 billion mark. I think I'm done from here because I cannot stand his face. And also, my big video this Friday is I'm going to go through the Doge cuts and see if they actually cut stuff and they found fraud. And they keep claiming they have. Oh, this is a good one. So, I had somebody from my life on my Facebook post this crazy article that trans men menstrual cycle, there was research, right? So I'm actually what was it? Trans men. I think it was A&M. A&M. Go A&M. I love A&M. A&M research. I think there was NIH research. Yes. Okay. So there was the claim was there was Elon Musk. He saved us from the research of studying trans men menstrual cycles. Now I initially read that as someone who is woke. When I read that, I said, "Huh, that's weird. Why would we be studying the menstrual cycles of trans men?" And it took me a minute to process that. When I heard trans men, I said, "Huh, but they don't menstruate." I had to sit there and like go, "Oh, trans men are people who were born as female and they're transitioning to become male." Took me like, and as someone who's woke as hell, it took me a minute to process that. So when I had a friend share this article, not this the Snopes one, but they shared an article. I think it was from X, but they shared an article saying like Trump and Elon, they cut trans man research for menstrual cycle. This is the crazy lunacy of the Democratic Party. So when they cut this, when they posted that, I thought, is that person thinking that trans men are men trying to become women? You know what I mean? Because that's how I read it. I was like, that's weird, trans. But and I'm someone who's in. I know the terminology. I know people who are trans, both men and female, and non. I feel like I'm pretty comfortable. It took me, maybe my dyslexia, but I read it a few times and I said, I I think the research is pretty normal here in this case. So if they're trans men, if this is true, that this research grant is studying menstrual cycles, trans men should be included. I know that's so woke to many people, but if I'm a scientist or a doctor and I need to study menstrual cycles, I don't give a fuck if the menstrual cycles come from a 6'5" person who's dressing like a dude, or the menstrual cycle is coming from a 2'2" mouse. I'm just looking at that's the beauty of science, is there's just this spectrum of like, we don't give a shit. We're trying to figure out something. And I think they were studying fiber and how it affects menstrual cycles. So I don't give a fuck if you call yourself a dude. If you have a menstrual cycle, I'm gonna be a scientist and study that. And it works. It's the beauty of science. Is like they if I'm studying if people have two eyes and what happens if you poke the two eyes. My cats are fighting. If you poke the two eyes, I'm not gonna be like, but what's their sexuality? No, my study pertains to people with two eyes. I just need to find that sample. I need to find the variable that's going to change, right? Like, am I stabbing people one time in the eye? I'm going to stab. That's science. That's it. I'm not working back from a conclusion. I'm just trying to see what happens if I do this, right? I've never been in that STEM field. This is purely off of what I've read, people I've known, and the professors I've looked up to who've explained this to me. I've heard, and working in my field, I work with NIH grants. I've worked with the grants as a whole, and I've seen the research that comes in. It's typically really boring. Does this chemical mess with this drug that patients take? Does steroids mess with this person's immune system? It's very boring stuff, but it's in the end goal fantastic. It's uncontroversial in the sense of like there's no like political identities tied to a lot of this stuff. But if they come out with it and say like, oh, actually we found that this medicine really affects only black people, we then look into it. Why does it only affect, like, that's where the society and other stems come together and try to figure out why. There's just the initial starting point is, what's the study about? Why are we trying to link this, and what are we trying to do, and what's the end goal? What items do we need? They're not asking about like what's let's make this woke. So that's my initial thought. We'll read this, but I wanted to put that out there. Of when my friend posted that, I was hurt to see such stupidity on my own timeline. But it wasn't even true. The U.S. Department of Agriculture canceled a $600,000 grant for a study on menstrual cycles and transgender men. On March 8, 2025, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Boland said on X that the U.S. Department of Agriculture had canceled a $600,000 grant for study on menstrual cycles and transgender men. Blah, blah, blah. Roland shared this link to a news article that said the American Principle Project, conservative political advocacy groups, discovered the grant and funding insanity federal spending on gender ideology under the Biden-Harris. Social media users, Facebook, X, Threads, spread the news. However, the USDA did issue 600 grants to Southern University and A&M, go A&M. According to the Rollins, According to Roland, since it canceled it, the university said on March 9th the grant did not fund research on menstrual cycles and transgender men, but rather research in disposable feminine hygiene products, also known as period products. This is backed up by the project proposal originally submitted by the USDA. Therefore, we rate the claim as false. And I've actually read this grant. Because I typically read grants to begin with. I read this grant. I read the money. I read the description. They were talking about menstruation for a certain age group. They were trying to see what would occur with menstruating women, and obviously here they explain it better than I. They're trying to see how menstrual items affected women and people who menstruated. And in the case of a scientist, I don't give a shit if you call yourself X, Y, and Z gender. If I'm doing a study, I just care about what your body is doing, so I can replicate this theory that I have. I can figure out if there is some changes if I change this and that. Like, that's all they care about. So I think when I read this, people don't know what trans men are. It was just fine because we always hear about trans women in sports. We never hear really much about trans men. Wonder why. And then also, I don't think people read the grant. I don't think people actually saw the proposal. I don't think they understand what half of this shit means. And we just canceled a pretty good study because of some identity politics and people who don't understand stuff. The word transgender appeared once. Oh, yeah, and this is another thing. The word transgender appeared once in the Southern University research poll. The full sentence is, it also important to recognize that transgender men and people with masculine gender identities, intersex, non-binary, also menstruate. That's all they did. This whole fucking proposal. And we haven't even did the study yet because it got canceled. We would have never, we can't even, it's like we saw the script of a movie and then we got mad that the movie was made, even though it was never made. If I look up transgender, what? Yeah, it's only shown up once. It shows up once. They mention it once because as a scientist, you should include people. It would be like, let's just, if I'm a scientist and I want to study, this is 1950s. I'm studying how heart medicine affects people. And I go, well, I don't want to include black people. Even though there's law, segregation, Jim Crow stuff. A scientist back in the day would be like, I don't care if they had integrity and knowledge and wisdom. They would see this and go, I don't care if a black guy is part of my study. I don't care if a Mexican dude's part of my study. Does he have a heart? Is he human? Does he take the same meds? That's what they look at. So if I'm a scientist back in the day and there was Jim Crow era stuff and I want to include a black, white, Mexican sample of people, someone to be like, they're trying to include black people and Mexicans in this white man study. That's how you idiots sound. When people try to talk about science, they usually have to speak with like walking on glass around you fools because you don't understand that you don't know what transgender men to begin with means. You don't understand that these people also menstruate, so you should study them, and you would let your political hate get in front of this. You would, sorry, my nose is super itchy. You would let your political hate get in front of this study that at the end would save more. Like, if you want to protect women, we should probably include all women or people who were women to help other women. It's not that hard. It's not that fucking complicated. You people piss me off. What's my other one? Oh, this is not much to talk about, but god damn it. I want to see what Sam Seder said.
I don't care if they've already come out and said I'm voting against it or I'm voting for it. Call them. Tell them that Elon Musk has already started to shut down parts of our government. That if they're going to do their job, the clearest job that Congress has is appropriation of funds.
I was curious if he was following up on his debate. So Sam Seder had a debate where he I was curious what my recent search was. I was like, did I have any porn on there? So Sam Seder had a debate where he talked about left-wing topics against like 20 Trump supporters. So these people are kind of going viral. I know it's these three, and then there's like a fourth person. Or sorry, I thought this was the Mexican dude. Wait, was this Mexican? No. So there's this dude who talked about how like gay people, we love Trump. He hasn't done anything to affect gay people. This guy talked about, I think he talked about like the government, and then like government spending, and then this guy talked about government spending, and then he said like DEI is so bad because people would just get tax breaks. And he's like, well, the government can't get tax breaks. Like, if a government agency is getting tax breaks for DEI hires, that just makes sense because they're getting funded by taxpayers. And he goes, you're wrong. You're so wrong. He talks like that. He goes, you're so wrong. That's how he talks. He's a fucking dweeb. He's a nerd. And people are falling for it. People like Cat Turd. You can't really see it here, but Cat Turd is a uh, shitty shit poster, and he's saying stuff like liberals are so dumb. Let me see if I can move it. Liberals are so dumb. My brother in Christ. Who's the liberal in this case that you think is the, because he was watching the video with Sam. He probably didn't know who Sam Seder was. Or God, I hope he is, and he just called it right. But people like Cat Turd are seeing people like this guy and being like, this is not a real conservative because they're so stupid. The look you get when you know you have a debate with a brainless, witless social justice warrior. Everyone thinks that this guy's the social justice warrior. He's the Republican. He's a Trump supporter. So Sam Seder's debate was incredible. And I just wanted to unless you're a billionaire religious fundamentalist or a xenophobic nationalist voting for Trump, Trump was a mistake. And people came up and were like, I don't understand the question, but I love that Trump is doing Christian nationalism. I love that Trump is doing xenophobic. They proved his point for him. There was one chick who was like, there's nothing wrong with being xenophobic, nationalistic because we have one culture, one identity, America. Da 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 da. You've come to find out later that she's a Canadian immigrant. Good job. This guy talked about how women should be second to their husband. Gay people are wrong. They shouldn't get married. They shouldn't adopt. He proved the point of the nationalists. Cedar conceded that, yeah, this guy is just proving my point. All these people are proving my point of you guys are, unless you're rich, unless you're super fundamental, radical Christian or racist, Trump, you're winning. And he would say that, you're winning. And these people would be like, yeah, that's, yeah. My brother. What are we doing here? So, that's what I want to find that clip. I know people have just been, I think this is it.
Attack on DEI hides his real goal, which is to give corporations more power.
DEI essentially provides tax cuts for the end of the year when you create your tax returns. They give you a tax credit for hiring someone who is black or a person of color.
We're talking about government agencies that do not get tax cuts. Government agencies.
They don't.
No,
yes, they do. They absolutely do.
I'm talking about
every private and public sector gets tax cuts when you hire a person of color.
Government agencies don't pay taxes. Government agencies are funded by the government.
That is not true. That is not true. And you know what? I think the whole juxtapose of this.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. I think what I think you can come out of this stuff is that also dominant culture, European Christian values. I gotta retweet that. That's beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, the arguments that these people made here is insane. At one point, Cedar is talking about how, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, they're not being paid properly by the wealthiest 1%ers, right? They are paying less than us average Joes, or at the very least not less than I think they're paying 600,000 to our 6,000, but per capita, that's my 6%, that's their less than 1%, right? So it just doesn't seem fair. And that's the point that he tries to get across with this guy. It doesn't get there. The guy's like, why should they be paying more? Why should they be paying more? Why should they be paying more? And it's they're not even paying the same, relatively speaking. But the guy just doesn't understand that. He looks at it well, technically that millionaire or billionaire is paying more. It's they are paying more by the dollar amount. But that was their $20. That was our $6,000. There's a difference here.
Identity.
Why? So your argument is that
has been the dominant culture.
Just to be
clear, and we're not letting people assimilate to that. We're saying you should keep your culture, and this is why our culture is so divided.
Your argument is that Trump is good for those who want a dominant white European culture.
I mean, that is what America is. It's rooted in European identity.
So you see, that was his prompt, and she just walked into it. I don't even think they heard him as a person. I think they just said we're just gonna parrot our points. He wanted you to say this because it doesn't look good. As a Mexican Trump supporter, I would look at this and go oh, that's kind of weird. At a median voter, right? Most of the Trumpers that show up to this kind of stuff, they're deep in it. There was Mexicans on here that were nah, he's cool. But as a regular average Joe, you'd be that's kind of weird. I have a cousin who's deep in the red Kool-Aid, and I don't think I'm ever going to get to him. But I think there are people who are the average Joes, because I look at him like, I think you're just politically bored. I think this is like a fun Facebook meme to you. If you're actively going out and voting and protesting or campaigning for Trump, that's different. But he's never been that. And most of the people that I know who are the Trumpers voted for him out of like, whatever. Yeah, I liked what he said that one time. Kamala's kind of weird. That's how they vote, and them will not vote for Trump if he continues at this pace. If this is what the fan base thinks of these people, like Mexicans. And also, she says that like this is deep rooted in American society. It's European, Western European mindsets, the whites. It's not. It's not. Let's be real here. If you are talking about the inception of the Americas, there was contention of what the Americas would be. You had a Spanish colonizer taking over and basically fighting with the indigenous people, right? Okay, so you can say like, well, the America that we know was the Eastern colonies fighting against a brown native group of people. And I identify with the white people of that. So that's America to me. But many who survived those decades, the hundreds of years of fighting against the American oppressors, they would say and look at America differently. And I don't think they're less American. I think that's just their perspective. Fast forward, we had slaves, and that's what boomed the economy and what America was eventually going to be and what it became. The black Americans who did exist, and they were Americans, as much as you don't like to admit that they were even here, they were. And you look at that and go, I don't know, you're denying their history as well. Like, they were also Americans. And so you can say, like, it was I would identify more with white people, great, but they still were American. They were still part of this melting pot. It was a shitty melting pot for them, but they were included, and to ignore their history is no different than ignoring an MLK to an Obama. I'm going to let this clip play while I let my dogs in. Give me 1 second.
And Christian values. That's what it has been. Would you really disagree with that? What is it then, if that's not the identity of America?
Well, I think the identity of
For the
America,
majority of time, America's been a country. You don't think that's been the identity?
well, actually, no. I think actually the identity of America has been, for better or for worse, a melting pot in that regard.
Yeah, maybe since like the 1960s.
1960. She ignores the inception of the Americas from the Spanish colonization to the French colonization, excluding the European, the United Kingdom colonization. And those three groups of people, I don't think you would call them just white West. I think a French person would be offended if you just called them the same as a UK person. So her point that she's coming at is stupid. Nobody would agree with this. Every person, someone from the UK would look at America and say they're not white enough, and vice versa. And we're ignoring the native history that the people who are still alive would exist and say like I don't feel that this is America. I don't think it's just the American colonization. I feel like my native history is part of this American history. Then we also ignore the the Mexican independence that came from the Spanish. We ignored the Canadian Americas. Like, America is this weird melting pot as a continent, and we ignore I'm a Mexican American. I've been in Arizona before it became a territory. I identify with the Mexican lineage and heritage, even though I find myself identifying more with Americans, even though Americans don't look like me typically. When people think of America, they don't look like a brown dude who looks Middle Eastern. They look like the white settlers, but I identify with them because I'm like, well, they're American, and I identify with my Mexican roots because they're Mexican, and I have this very unique standpoint. I'm no less American than she is. If anything, I'm more American because I've been in this country 7 generations, where she's been it once, and not even then. She's an immigrant. She's not even one. I'm giving her the one to be nice. And yeah, the cops will probably favor her more than me, but if we're talking about America and what the Americas is, I'm more of a US American than she will ever be. And I can't sit here and ignore where did you even come from? The 1960s. My family has been here in Arizona since the 1800s. Who the fuck are you to tell us anything about what America is and what it isn't? It's a melting pot. There's an Indian American and Asian American who have different sides of the coin, who understand how and why this world works for them and what doesn't. And just the same for her. Imagine being a woman in America. Like there's many men who dominated the American history. You have very little men, or very little women, like Betsy Ross to a Rosa Parks, and they are also important. But to her, and I think her fan base, they would ignore those brave women like a Harriet Tubman because they don't fit the American ideology. I don't think I'm taking history lessons from this idiot who says 1960s is when we became a melting pot. We've always been. Brother, we've always been a melting pot. Even by force, we were a melting pot when there were slaves. Music didn't just spawn from the 1950s. The black experience took music from their roots. And that black experience from the slave days inspired music from the current generation, and then so on and so on. And now, if I'm sure she listened to rap at some point, she was in a club and heard rap music. That is part of American ideology, that rap culture, even though you might not like it. That's part of America. That is more American than her ass. And she's gonna sit here and tell us what is and what isn't. Like, come on. What are we doing here? You know, like, she's pathetic. She's a loser. She's also a hypocrite. Like, she's not really a U.S. American. She is a loser who's trying to tell people that white is right. Fuck everyone else. And people like her deserve the worst. Terrible person. But she's a useful idiot. We can see this and say, like, this is what the Trumpers believe in, and make them look dumb if they defend it. Okay, let's go to the next one. So my last topic, I think this is a good place to end it on, because I think, so we saw what happened with the Ukraine incident. Trump, Ukraine agrees to proposal for ceasefire. Okay, yeah, so we saw the Ukraine debacle. Ukraine's at this war. They're sitting with Trump in the office, and he kicks them out. And it's just an embarrassing moment in American history that Trump was at, like, you're not even wearing a suit. Why are you not wearing a suit? And it's like, I'm so sorry. My nose is like insanely itchy. I think I have like something in it. I'm not picking my nose in front of y'all. Trump is berating him. JD Vance is berating Zelensky, and there's a fight, and then they cut aid, and now it's been restored after, I think, Zelensky sent him a letter and said, like, I'm so sorry. And I sit there and think, like, man, that must be hard. Like, you're having all your people die. To stop this, you do need to kiss the ring of the king who's giving you money. But all the people that slid in my DMs and said, like, it's good that we cut Ukrainian aid, they can suck our butts, blah, blah, blah. We shouldn't give money to... Like, I had people who were, like, super isolationists were telling me we shouldn't give any money to Ukraine. Now, where are you at? Like, what are you going to say to this? He's giving money to them. It wasn't about, like, this, like, oh, I think we should not go to war. We're going to... Like, I had people in my DMs saying, like, if we give money to Ukraine, we're going to go to World War III, which I think is stupid, because the opposite of that is, if we don't give money and Russia expands and beats Ukraine, now they're closer to a NATO country. That would lead to a World War III if a NATO country gets taken over. And the likelihood of that to happen is more higher if we allow Ukraine to fall. So it's there's arguments for both sides. I imagine the U.S. imperialism does scare Russia, and our furthering of NATO could scare Russia, but it's also at the same time, like, we should concede to war criminals and dictators. You know, like, we should allow the U.S. to not play possum because they have nuclear weapons. Like, no, we also have nuclear weapons. I don't want to get to that point. I think it's stupid that we're, like, measuring our wieners like this, but we also just can't let this guy run through it. Like, we should have stepped up when they took Crimea. Like, that was ridiculous. But it sounds like we are giving aid to Ukraine. So yeah, let's read it up. Okay, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Tuesday that Ukraine accepted a 30-day ceasefire proposed by the United States following critical peace talks between the U.S. and Ukrainian officials in Saudi Arabia. Ceasefire proposal accepted by Ukraine covers an entire front line of fighting with Russia, not just air or the sea. Zelensky also said the 8-hour meeting. Ukraine accepts the proposal. We consider it positive. We are ready to take such a step. The United States and America must convince Russia to do so. The United States sent a joint statement. Ukraine following message immediately lift the pause of intelligence sharing and resume security assistance to Ukraine. The Ukraine official confirmed confirmed on Tuesday that U.S. assistance to Ukraine resume. The U.S. Secretary Marco Rubio immediately after meeting on his and Russia's take steps to end war. We hope they'll say yes, and they'll say yes to peace. The ball's in their court. U.S. Donald Trump later welcomed the news and vowed to speak with Russian Putin about the plan, potentially this week. Developments will be huge relief for Kiev after extraordinary public blow-up between Trump and Ukrainian leaders less than 2 weeks ago. Tuesday, talks occurred at a crucial time of the war as Moscow's forces continue to advance in Kursk's region of Russia, where Ukraine launched a shocking incursion in August, threatening Kiev's sole territory bargaining counter. The U.S. joint statement emphasized that Kiev had expressed readiness and accepted the U.S. proposal to enact an immediate interim 30 ceasefire to extend the initial agreement by the parties, which is subject to acceptance and concurrent implementation by Russian Federation. The United States will communicate with Russia. Reciprocity is the key to achieving peace. Because he said a proposal for ceasefire included silence in the sky and the sea, release Ukrainian prisoners to establish confidence in the whole situation, return Ukrainian children from Russia. Two sides agreed to conclude a rare mineral deal as soon as possible. The Ukrainian delegation, which not includes Zelensky, met the U.S. Okay, so yeah, I mean that's awesome. That's cool. They have a seat. So is the UK are they giving up anything? It is up to Russia to stop, but Putin has made it clear he wants Moscow to gain control over the entirety of Ukraine and the Eastern Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kherson and Zaporizhzhia regions. That's fun. They occupy 20% of Ukraine's territory, roughly up 7% of Moscow control before it launched its unprovoked scale. Okay. I don't know if they've given up anything. I think that's my biggest, like, I don't blame Ukraine for not taking the deal, because it's like, why give up? Like, imagine they told you we're taking a piece of Florida. Well, we shouldn't provoke war. We gotta, like, is Florida really that worth it? Yeah, Florida's fucking worth it. It's our country. You don't take from us. But as Ukraine, do they have those cards like the U.S.? They don't. And so do you sit there and go, what's worth it? I'm not gonna tell Zelensky, hey bro, what you did with that deal. Like, no, when you're getting people dying, yeah, it sucks. Like, and you know that the president is unhinged. Yeah, you don't really have much cards in your field. Like, the guy wants to he wants to concede more to please Putin. It seems like he thinks that Putin has the leverage, which I think Putin does have leverage, but it's also like you're kind of letting him have this leverage. So yeah, I think this is a win for Trump. He's going to look great. The headline's going to read Ukraine ceasefire. Ukraine accepted a deal. You know, after being humiliated, they kissed the ring. It's going to be a good win for him. As someone who's like, I really hope they didn't give up much, but I'm also like, what else do they have? Do they have any opportunity to give up nothing? I think that's a good place to end it. Oh, no. One more story, the depressing one. There was a Palestinian protester, God, how do you spell Palestinian? I'm going to stop it here. Sorry, I'm getting a call, an important one. Sorry, guys. We'll talk about this next time. Love ya. Bye.